Tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Well, in real estate, let's start with real estate or you want to start before that, right?
Whatever you tell.
Well, really, what at one point I thought I was going to be a medical doctor, not person, but research and that because I worked at laboratories and Nova Laboratories, and I was in charge of the research and development for insulin. So with Banting Invest, semi-government with grants and stuff like that. But I was trying to go to school and work at the same time, and it was and I liked it, and I always believe in helping people anyway. Um, but it was it's political, and if you don't really like something, you're not supposed to say something, and that's not who I am. I don't like something, I'm going to bring express what's going on, right? So. But I as a young boy, I was a Monopoly king. We were a little modest family. We grew up. I was born downtown Toronto. We moved to North York when I was about 5 or something like that. And so we're a modest family. We had a wartime bungalow, and then my father worked for, I think at the time, the third richest man in Canada. So he's a CEO of many companies, on the board of 12 other places. The exhibition was one of them. Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever. I mean, so many different things. But so I seen a lot of beautiful, nice cars, a beautiful lot of homes, and and I enjoyed that. I liked that. And then being a Monopoly king, it just sort of all played into it. So I decided to not pursue the medical field and pursue into real estate at a young age, and when interest rates were very high at 21%.
Wow.
So, at that time, not a lot of people were selling too much. But because I wasn't brainwashed, I always had, I was a preemie when I was born. So in my DNA, I'm not a super big guy. I'm a normal guy, but and being a preemie, I was like what they call a blue baby at the time. I had to sit in an incubator for basically a month. So my DNA, because I came out early. I was like a month early. So um, I was always a fighter. It didn't matter what I did, that I would just fight. And that really gave me my drive and my whole DNA for my whole life. That, some things you can change and some things you can't change. You can't change your parents. You can't change where you were brought up. You can't change, but you can change, if something happens, you can change your actions and what you do.
Yeah.
That's totally up to you. Right. So, some choices are not right. Some choices are amazing. But the number one thing is make that choice and just do that thing. Right. Women has a better intuition than men. But I always say there's a gut feeling. If you have a gut feeling and it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
So trust your gut, but then you got to trust your wisdom along with your gut. So you put those two things together and you're unstoppable,
Yeah.
right? So I worked on my mindset my entire life. And I continue to work on it, 30 plus years in real estate. I'm coached by some of the most amazing coaches and mentors that anyone can have. Because if you only do what you always did, you're only going to get what you did, and then you probably start sliding down because, I always want to stay ahead of the curve. So constantly feeding that mindset and having that belief.
And I love that we're starting to with mindset. I always say that if you need a skill in this business or any business, is emotional regulation number one, and then the rest. Let me ask you, how did you transition from being a solo agent into building a team?
Well, the funny thing is that me and Greg Proctor, you know who Greg Proctor is, right?
Yeah.
Me and him are the founding people of starting teams. So we started well in the 25 years ago. And, the one thing I realized, I'm great at a lot of things, but there's other things that I'm not so great on and that I should find someone. So the first thing I did was get one assistant, and then I got two assistants, right? And then I got a buyer's agent, right? So I started as, being a top producer. I was already in the top 100, top 50, top, I don't know, whatever. And, it was for me, I'm very articulate and I like things to do correctly. But, if I take all my time doing paperwork, because then there was no such thing as an email, DocuSign, even fax machine wasn't even around that back in those days, right? I'm like a dinosaur in this business, right? So you always had to go and see people, sign off. So they're in
Everything.
two
Yeah.
different directions. You go there, even when you're doing offers, I remember lots of times we'd be till 5 o'clock in the morning doing an offer, right? Like, working 80, 90 hours a week. So, um, so I remember my first assistant, Merle. She was amazing. Merle Garb is her name. She has a sort of a marketing team that they still do. I don't know if they're still doing it. I haven't seen her in a while, but she was amazing. Great person, very brilliant, very smart. And then we got Josie. Then we got a buyer's agent. I mean,
Would you recommend right now for someone in this day and age that starts in real estate, what would be the first hire? Would it be an assistant, an ISA, a showing agent, a buyer agent?
no, assistant.
Assistant.
The very first one, and don't do it right away. I mean, go make some money, right? Everybody, so what everybody wants to do now is start a team, but 80% of those teams are going to fail because they don't have a plan. They don't have, a system that's put into place to make it work. So, but, just if you're one agent, go make X, Y, Z dollars. And when you start making like, that, because now you got to be able to pay that assistant. Because what happens is they hire them, they make all these promises they're going to pay them all this money. And the next thing you know, they don't have a job,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'll give you, for instance, so there was a person, um, she applied for a job of mine, and she's fairly qualified, but I'm a little further south for her, and she's a little further north. But she was at a place, and they were paying her X, Y, Z, and not much was happening. So they ended up giving her a raise. What happened is, a year later, she's got no hours. She's barely working, and so yeah, they made all these promises, but they didn't fulfill them.
Yeah.
So now she's looking for work again. So it's a lot of aggravation. So she's actually making less than when she started, than because they promised, they're going to pay her X, Y, Z. And meanwhile, oh yeah, they'll still pay her X, Y, Z, but she's only working like 4 or 5 hours a week. How can you live on 4 or 5 hours a week when you're supposed to be a high, a big high type of person, right?
So
So,
you recommend hiring an assistant once you have enough business to be able to support that assistant. What would be the next hire? Buyer agent, showing agent?
well, depends on what your strength is and depends on what your goal is, right? Like, you know, you just having one assistant, maybe you just want to work with one assistant, let them do all the photography, take all the notes and do all the feature sheets and all of that, right? All, put the listing together and everything like that. So you might be satisfied with just doing the one assistant. So it depends on where you want to go, because I don't think everybody should try and have a team.
Yeah.
I think some of them should try and get onto a good working team. They'd be far better than doing it that way. But I don't think everybody should go and try and develop a team,
Yeah.
right?
You
Because no, but you might be an okay salesperson. I'm saying okay because I don't know if they're rocket ships right now. If you look at the industry, that maybe 10% of the agents are doing like 80% of the business or something like that. So do they fit into that 10%? Most likely not,
Mhm.
right? Because they're still maybe only a year, 2 years in the business. So they've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So, and what happens is people want to get to here before they got to here. They just want to go from here to here. You got to take steps along the way, right? So it's like having a foundation. If you don't have a very, very strong foundation, like if you built a house on sand or quicksand, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It's going to crash. So if they don't have a very strong foundation, and I would say 90% of the people that are trying to do teams do not have a strong foundation.
What would
And
be the systems and processes that they would have to put in place as team that would like to start? Let's say they have great for production, they're perfectly positioned to start a team. What would be the processes and systems that they should be implementing before starting a team?
well, first of all, get organized yourself. Like be able to make the sales, because now you have to be able to pay your bills, and then you also have to pay uh, um, your brokerage fees, your real estate fees, and all that. So you have to make sure that you have enough money that you can cover all yourself and all your expenses, and have enough for the tax man.
So
And
budgeting. So budgeting would be the first step.
yes, you need to budget. And
Budget.
then after that, after you've done so much, then you could, even if you had to hire a part-time person, right, to do some of your paperwork and stuff like that, right? Even start part-time. Maybe you don't want to go full-time, but start full part-time and then build from that. And then if that person's good, then maybe you can take them on full-time, or then maybe you can bring another full-time person onto there. And
So
then if you've got enough business, then look for a buyer agent,
mhm,
right?
got it.
Because maybe that agent, because you got to realize, just because you're an okay agent doesn't mean you're a good team leader,
Yes.
right? And that's why I say some of them are better off to go join an existing team already than
Yeah.
try and make a team,
What
right?
does it take to be a good team leader? What
Well,
qualities?
first and foremost, you have to have a vision. You have to have where you can inspire and teach them and help them grow. Because listen, there's lots of people. I know so many people that I know for years, they were, fairly good salesperson in whatever they did. And they used to say, oh, they're coming in, they're going to crush me and all this other things. I go, don't worry about me. Worry about yourself. I mean, I can help you along the way, but don't come in here and say you're going to go smash me and go knock me down, whatever, because you've lost sight. So lots of people, they're trying to compete with other people. There's no reason to try and compete with them. Compete with yourself. Be better. You're this today. Be better tomorrow. Be better the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So continued growth. So so a good salesperson doesn't make them a good leader by any shape of the imagination. Like, they could be the worst freaking leader there is, but a good salesperson.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't go start a team. They don't have that mindset. They don't have that vision, right? They don't have that leadership skill. Like, I even know with a couple of managers that we had, they're good in certain things, but they're not really good in leadership
Yeah.
positions.
What would
So,
be the quality number one as a leader?
well, being able to learn and be coached yourself, number one, right? You got to be coachable and you got to be accountable yourself. And then you've got to have some skills, because you don't have the skills. How are you going to be able to share those skills, right? So, um, and I always believe that everybody, and I don't care where you are, from no deals to 100, 200, 300, you should go get a coach,
Yes.
right? So I believe, listen, I've been coached by, like I said, and mentored by some of the best people in this entire industry. And even outside of this industry, I've had coaches and mentors. So I still continue to learn every single day. I always say, if you're not learning, you're dying,
Yeah.
right? So
You
continue growth with your mindset, with your skills, because you still need skills. What are your skills, right? How are you going to teach somebody else? So there's a lot of people that, that work in my team that are way smarter than I am with doing techie stuff and, paperwork and stuff like that. My personal assistants, they can do 10 times, 20 times better job than I can do.
yeah.
But I just have to, like, say, okay, here's what we're looking for, give them a goal, give them a plan, and get out of their way and let them go do it. Right.
Yeah.
But I got to monitor it and make sure it's being done correctly.
Yeah.
I want to make sure the end result is done correctly, right? So yeah, I can go distribute something, but if they go and do everything wrong, then I'm in trouble, they're in trouble, and we're going backwards.
Yeah.
So being articulate, right? Because in this business, you can get in a lot of trouble if you're not articulate. That you got to make sure you got the taxes, you got to make sure the room measurements are correct, you got to make sure the boundary thing. So being articulate is very important because otherwise you're going to get in trouble. So if you're going to hire an assistant, maybe get an outside company to hire them or someone that hires people because how many people have you hired, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people have
What
no.
y- y- what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a mega team? Because you are at the size of a mega team right now.
Yeah, I'm a mega team. Well, I'll tell you what. I didn't just go to be a mega team because I said, no, I want to have a mega team. It was, trust me, when I had four people, one buyer agent and two assistants, we were doing 325 families, helping 325 families. So we were mega just with four people, right? So, but I was working myself 80 to 90 hours a week. It's just like rolling, 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 rolling. So, you can't, that's a pace, not anybody or everybody can do that. I'm the top 1% of the top 1% of the industry for my whole career. So, you know, how much you're going to work? Listen, work smart, work efficiently. Me, I always believed in I could outwork anybody. And then that's, I would say I might be a slow learner, but when I learn something, I become the master of what I learned. Right. So we have the new computer system realm now. The old system we worked forever. I could do things on there in my sleep. I could do things just like realm. I'm still in the process of learning and have to master it, right? So it takes
What would
time.
what would you say that would it's the biggest advantage of having a mega team versus when you were a smaller team? What are
Well,
what are the advantages?
it's real easy when you're a smaller team. Probably the most productive was roughly when we had 4 and 6 people because you're a tight knit group. You're constantly together. You're constantly doing things. No nonsense. I mean, we had fun, obviously, but being focused on what we had it to do. But as you become a bigger team, then you've got to get, sales manager, operations manager, client care manager, personal assistant. So,
How many staff do you have right now?
well, right now we have probably 70 to 80 people that work on the team right now.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, we're bigger than some of the brokers.
Yes,
Right?
yeah. And how many are staff out of the
Well,
70?
out of the leadership, we have 15.
15. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you brought
And mostly everybody's licensed.
license, yeah.
Right. They're all
And
licensed,
and you
except
brought
the
a
ones that
very
are not licensed are my marketing department and then the girls at the front desk. But everybody else is licensed.
You brought a very good point here. You are a team inside of a brokerage, and you're a team that's bigger than a lot of the brokerages
Yes.
itself. What made you still want to stay as a team inside of a brokerage instead of opening your own brokerage?
Well, that's a great question. And, probably I'll continue to ask that for the rest of my life. I mean, there's times where I thought, you know what, that I'll just go open up my own brokerage, whatever.
Mhm,
But when I find a good brokerage, and I've worked with Royal LePage and I've worked with Remax. That's where I've worked.
mhm.
So I was with one, went to the other, went back in different circumstances. They're long, long stories that we don't have enough time to go into now. But um, in the early 90s, real estate was a lot worse than it is today. Most of the brokerages were folding and lots of problems. So at that time, I switched brokerages but I always missed that one. I didn't mean it wasn't really so much their fault as the broker being um, to a certain point. So, find like do two things. One, if you want to go find a good brokerage, because I'm with Remax now, and I truly enjoy Remax because I got good broker owners. They're my partners, right? I have my own office. I work under their umbrella, but they're the brokers of record, right? So, I had a broker that, went to jail because they were taking the trust funds, right? So I lost a lot of money.
Okay.
Like I lost a lot, like hundreds and hundreds, like to the tune of over $1 million at the end of the day with taxes and everything else. So,
Mm.
I was the head agent there, but I thought I basically owned it. But I, brought lots of people in, but I didn't. And So, make sure you get a good, honest, ethical broker because the trade records, that's got to go into the bank account, can't be touched till it's signed out.
So
So
it was it's more convenient to not have that kind of liability and
for
be
me, yes. For me,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Because they do all that. I don't have to do any of that, right?
Are you
Remember?
still because of that, do you get time back and now you're still in production because of that? Are you still selling real estate?
I still sell real estate. I don't sell as much as I once did personally, but I still sell because, I've got a lot of good people that, have been my clients for over 30 years and they still want to do business with us, repeat and referral business. I've got a program called the Royal Treatment, treat anybody like family. I got that from my
Right.
late father, right? And just and and like he was so social with everybody. We'd go anywhere, he would talk to everybody. So if you're ever with me somewhere, you'll see I talk to everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Old, young, doesn't matter if you're white, black, yellow, Asian, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Young or old, tall or thin. I treat everybody equally the same. We
Yeah.
have 34 different nationalities that work on our team right now,
Nice.
and just treat everybody with respect, whether it be the janitor or the CEO of the
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
right?
What would you
So that's
recommend, for example, someone who built a team, let's say not a mega team, but a smaller team, at what number of transactions or a GCI would you recommend that they would come out of production?
I don't really believe there's a real true template of that. Well, there may be, but I believe that after you do so many deals, you have to add one more leadership onto those deals, right? So what's the maximum capacity that you can do before you hire somebody else,
Mhm.
right? So, once I think you do 50 deals, maybe less, maybe even 25 deals, you should have an assistant, maybe even before that,
Mhm.
right? Like you can start even with 5 deals to get a part-time assistant, right?
Yeah.
To at least they can help you free up your time because if not, you've got to figure out what is my dollar per hour? How much
Yeah.
does it cost me? We'll figure out what your dollar per hour is and figure out, okay, if I spend 2 hours here, is it better for me to pay someone to do that versus me doing it myself?
Yeah.
And most times it should be they can do it more efficiently than you can and a lesser hour than you can, right?
And at what point did you come out of production?
I'm still in production.
No, I mean not to proactively every day take on that role, other than your, the clients that you're still servicing.
I still love that part of the business because that's why I got in the business, helping people.
Yeah.
So by me doing that, I help my team because it helps them get business
Mhm.
and it helps me because I'm helping people and it helps them because they're getting looked after. We get tons of testimonials from, we did more than we promised to do, right? So over deliver more than what you're going to tell them to do. That's rule number one, right? And it's constantly working on that. Um,
What
to be,
what technology are you using in order to stay connected with the team to communicate? What
we
software?
have we have we have everything of everything. I mean, there isn't anything that we don't have, right? So we've got a few different CRMs that we use.
Oh, what CRM are you using?
I won't get into that because everybody's going to have a different. Like I've been using Top Producer, that
Okay.
and Top Producer's been around for freaking ever. So that's one of them. We got Follow Up Boss, we got Sync, we got KV Core. So we have 4 different CRM systems that we use,
Yeah.
right? We've got Google. Um, we got AT Chat, right?
Yeah.
So
So
there is in technology, we are always constantly working to upgrade and move forward,
yeah.
right? So
I wanted to ask you because I ask pretty much all the team leaders, and I see that there's different formula of building a mega team. Is your team built on generating leads through majority listings, online leads, marketing? Like there's people that do massive marketing between flyers, magazines, billboards, bus stations. Where are your business coming from?
Well, it's real simple. One pillar will not bring you enough business for a mega team,
Yeah.
right? So I used to have 42 pillars,
Oh, wow.
42, to always be able to create the hamster wheel keep going around, right?
Mhm.
So, some things maybe pull out, some things added, some things need to be fixed up, whatever. So it's an ongoing process continually. But, and years ago, we only really worked on was my good friend Mike Ferry, who I just got to see 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Mike was my personal coach and mentor for many, many years. And I'd gone through his whole family, his sons, all his top coaches, his president of the company. They were all my personal coaches, right?
Amazing.
So we used to just work on that. And then we got into Joe Stump, which is sort of a leg of Brian Buffini. Um, and they were two different styles, completely two different styles. So they always say you can only have one coach, if you look at professional hockey or professional sports or a lot of things. But, you got a lot of different individuals, and some may be more inclined to do this, some may be more inclined to do this. So I try and teach them the different ways, and we have the different coaches speak. Like we just had a coaching call with Danny Wood with us the other day. Richard Robbins is going to come on in March with us. So always, 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 I was at the Buzz where I got to hear lots of
Yeah.
different great speakers,
So
right?
would you say that one of your pillars is past clients and sphere
Oh, my main one is my past
past clients?
clients and my sphere of influence are my one and two, without a doubt.
In terms of getting listings, is it the marketing, the flyers, the billboards, or that's not
Everything. You have
the
to realize if
yeah.
you only do one thing and you don't spread out, like if I just did flyers, but we never called them,
Oh, yeah.
you might get some calls, but
Yeah.
you follow it up with a call, you're going to enhance it that much greater,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you're always trying to improve your odds to help people do business,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's not just one way. Listen, I live in a certain area, and there's not a lot of different ways that I can come here to go to work. But lots of days I'll change, or if I'm driving, I'll go around different neighborhoods, check out what's going on and stuff like that, right? So it's always seeing what else is out there, and we'll test a lot of different things out. We'll see what works, what doesn't work. You can't be a squirrel though. Like lots of people, they're always trying to sell you the magic pill. The one thing I'll instill is there's no magic pill.
So is your team coming in the office, is working in the office? Do they have working hours? They need to prospect, pick up the phone, go door knocking around the listings?
Well, once upon a time, basically everybody came into the office.
Yes.
So after COVID, that's changed the working world, right? But when we're highest productivity is when everybody came into the office, because then we would see each other, we would bounce things off each other, we would role play, practice our skills every day.
Yeah.
Now we still can do that, but it's to me it was more efficient when they all came to the office
In
at
the
the
office.
same time. We
Is there
all
is
practice and role play at the same time.
is there a minimum standard to be part of your team? Do you have like a process? You have to be certain years in the business or
No,
oh,
because no, the difference is because you don't know who's going to be the next you,
I
right?
know.
Like, I've known some people that we brought on here, and with it 1 year, they helped a lot of families. I talked to them every day and coached them and taught them and stuff like that. Some worked individually, some worked with another partner on the team. You know, we've had team members on 23 years, and we've had some teams less than 1 year, right?
So what let's approach a subject that it's always kind of like, oh, It's such a terrible word in this industry, recruiting. How important it is for a mega team to have a recruiting department or having a proper onboarding process to properly train them.
1,000% important, right? Because here's the thing, that no matter what, people will come and people will go. Like before, in years going, someone would work 30 or 40 years and then they would retire with that company. Today, people, for whatever reasons, and there's lots of reasons, and we could go through 1,000 reasons probably, but sometimes they'll move on, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because listen, you'll teach them. I always say, if I could teach you and you could be a better person after we've taught you, and I know other people that open up even their own real estate office, they've started their own teams or they've done well. And then there's other ones that have left and fell flat in their face. And they're making a third of what they made when they were working with us. So, I always say, I always think them as I'm their mentor, and I want to teach them to the best that they can be. But sometimes people say they're going to do this and this and this when they're coming on to join the team. They're going to be coachable, they're going to be accountable, they're going to do this and this and this. And then they get there and they just expect you to give them something that's going to buy a house or list their house just like that. But if they don't do anything, nothing would ever happen. So, that's a failure.
So do you have like a specialist specifically for recruitment, or is that your job to bring talent in the team?
Well, part of the talent that we look for every day is someone that we see out in the business. So, we might have done a sales with them and they were great to work with and might be a great addition. So we just ask them how they make it out at their brokerage, if they're not happy, if they're looking for new things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're always looking for like-minded people because we're a family, right? Like different brokerages are brokerages that, everybody's an individual agent. Sometimes you'll never even know who's in your office or they even work with you or you may never see them or whatever. But, when you work with a team, we have meetings all the time. And we work.
Are there minimum, like they're in order to be in your team, they have to be on like Tuesday?
Every mandatory meeting they cannot miss.
Okay. So what are the mandatory meetings?
Well, they're not every day, but we will have a mandatory meeting, once, 2 or 3 weeks, there'll be a mandatory meeting. Everybody's expected unless there are holidays or doctor's appointments, so everybody's expected. But we have training programs that run 3 to 4 times a week. Okay. So some are optional, some are, if you got to take FinTrack, you got to take what you got to take, right? Yeah. FinTrack is not optional. You've got to have that.
Yeah.
So
how do you foster culture in the mega team when there are so many personalities and styles?
Well, first and foremost, that starts from me, right? That treat people with kindness, treat people with respect. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's the CEO or the janitor. You treat everybody equally. Be kind, be courteous, give them the best of you, right? Right? Doesn't work. So when I hear someone going like that, it's just like, guys, no, right? So you want to be able to teach them to be the best they can. And then you want to have the belief that, the hardest thing for leaders or top agents is to be able to let go because, they can't do it as good as I can. They can't do it as good as I can. They can't do it as good as I can. And maybe they can, but, after time, chances are they'll become better than you are in certain things, right? And I'm not saying sales skills, but, to be a great agent, you need to make sure your skills are top. You need to improve on those every single day. I used to role play every single day. We had a mastermind group. There's 100 of the top agents in North America with any brand. And then I had, other masterminds were just say one brand, right? Royal Page or Remax, whatever it is. So I had different groups of people that I was always involved in. And then we had the elite group that we used to role play. So I would role play for 1 hour every single day, one at 7:30 or 7, whatever it was, either 7 to 7:30 and 7:30 to 8, or maybe 7:30 to 8 and then 8 to 8:30. But we used to role play for 1 hour every single day and role play many different things.
Yeah.
And
Do
so,
you take them out, for example, like quarterly meetings, events, so the team gets to bond with each other? What are your
yeah, we're always trying to do things that we can continue to bond together. I mean, that's why with mandatory meeting, everybody gets to see everybody, be socialize and learn together, right? So that's where they build up their friendships and okay, let's do an open house together, right? So lots of them, because I don't like them to do an open house by themselves for safety reasons. So I always like them to have two, but sometimes they want to do it individual. And if they've gone through all the training courses and they pass that, we let them do it individually, right? But I just think it's safer by having two people there, person, especially in today's world, what's going on.
how do you deal with the database, for example, on the departure of an agent?
Well, whatever is the King team group's leads or whatever, that will stay with the King team, right? If it's their stuff, they take it with them. That's simple. It's
Yeah.
really
And
it's
if you
really
were,
easy.
because I know you grew over time, now there's hundreds and hundreds of transactions that you're closing every year. If we were to look at a smaller team that is looking to move from 100 to 200 transaction a year, in your experience, what was one thing that you implemented in the team that facilitated that growth?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they're doing 100 transactions, they're a pretty darn good team. I'll tell you that right now. Because there's not a lot of teams that are really doing over 100 transactions,
Yeah.
right? I pretty much know all the top producers in North America. And,
How
to
can they
do
go to
100
200?
trans, well, the fact that they got to 100, they're doing something very correctly. So, my growth rate was always looked at as I want to be 20% better next year. Right? So if I'm at this number, I want to be 20% better next year. So keep building that foundation, right? I remember many, many years ago that there was me, Mike Smith, and is it Mike Smith? Is Mike Darda and Jim O'Sullivan. We were all top producers working there. We're doing roughly about over 100 transactions, and this is many years ago. When you hit 100, you're like top of the field. There was nobody else doing 100 transactions. So my goal was to go to 100 to 200, and their goal was to go from 100 to 200. So Matt Ferry was my coach at that time. That's Mike's son, and the three of us were going through this together. And I remember that the continuation of building up that foundation, because again, without that solid foundation, because what would happen is you would grow and then you would plateau.
Yeah.
So you would have to stabilize all your systems and what you're doing and go stream through everything, see what's working, what's not working, how can I streamline this, how can we improve on this, and then from there, what's it going to take to go from here to there? So you'd have a vision, you have a plan. So everything was a vision and a plan to move forward in the ways you would do it. So it's like a marathon runner. You couldn't just go run up 10Ks. You went and did 10Ks, you'd fall on your face the very first day. You'd be boom. So you have no chance of getting there. So working on the mindset, working on the skills to get to there. So I remember, I think I was at 157 transactions, helping 157 families successfully buy or sell or invest, whatever it is. And then from there, my goal is to go over 200. So then when I went to 200, we went over 200. And the very next year, I went to 313 families. So we had a 100-person growth almost in the next third year. But because my mindset was so plateaued and working on systems and foundations in that was my biggest growth in 1 year, over 100 transactions in
Was
1 year.
increasing the marketing or increasing the number of agents?
No, not increasing the number of agents.
No.
Pretty much same agents, same pretty much of everything. Just becoming more efficient and better and more systemized
Yeah.
than we were before, right?
Yeah.
So constantly it's like you have a very fast motorbike or a fast car. It's got to be fine tuned. So you always got to make sure that you're tuning up your operation. What's working, what's not working, where have we made mistakes? Because I'll tell you what, you're going to make mistakes. It doesn't matter. The more and the more you do, so it's trying to cut those mistakes out, right? Have a, you know, I always say, if we have a mistake, why did we have a mistake? And how can we prevent that from happening again? Right? Mental tiredness. Maybe it was a Friday afternoon. They're trying to get out of here. They're being lazy, whatever it is. So look at every
Yeah.
situation that you have, measure it, and then find a solution. Right. And so I always tell my people, if something's wrong, I'm not going to come down, but I might say, okay, what happened? And how can we correct this from happening again?
Yeah.
So always, so like when the market rate was 21%, I found a solution. I sold 27 homes in 7 months, my first year in the business, when most people weren't selling two homes per year, because I had a solution.
Yeah.
So always looking for that solution. And like I say, it's not the magic pill, because today it's like everybody's trying to sell you a magic pill. Get this, get that, get this, sell, sell. The early easiest person to sell is a salesperson,
Yeah.
because they're so gullible. Oh yeah, this thing's going to work. You don't have to work. You don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Just whatever,
Doesn't exist.
right?
I
So,
wanted to ask you a question that I ask all my guests. Um, what was, because you're a speaker, you go and do interviews, you do podcasts. What was one question that you were asking one of these ventures of yours that was such a smart question that you would think that that answer is worth it to be shared right now?
well, right there was a great question, right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. There is never a bad question, because, and I remember being in front of 4,000 people, whatever, and I'd always make sure I was in the front row, because I want to be able to pay attention. I wanted to take notes. I was always sitting there and writing notes. And, I have a photographic memory. So on people, there's no photograph on a name, but I can remember a face and a place. So things, and by triggering this, it triggers my reticular activator. So even today, that if I'm talking to you, I'm not taking notes now because we're just having a conversation. But if you're a client or something, I'm sitting there constantly taking notes. If I go through here, you'll see notes on everything I do, right? So here's one here, a client here that, I've done this, and I can't see it too good, but
No,
anyway,
not yeah.
but there's lots of notes on it, right? Because, so if you're busy and I get off the phone, how do I remember who I talked to? Because once upon a time, I used to make 100 contacts. So I talked to 100 people every single day. So if you were number one and I met 100, that's like 8 hours later, maybe. How could I remember what number one said?
Yeah.
I forget. You at an open house, you get 10 or 20 people in there. How do you remember who's who? I would always, 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 and I still do, take notes.
So taking notes and being organized and able to do a proper follow up, I assume,
Yes,
is the
follow
key.
up is key.
Yeah.
But there's no bad. I always say there's no bad question. No bad question. Like when we have our podcast, and then I always ask people, what would you like to know? Now, some people are afraid to, because they all think they know it all.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to know it all. The best and smartest person is the one that doesn't know it all and asks questions, right? Asking questions is important, because how are you ever going to find anything out,
Yeah.
right? You're not. That's why every day I used to read a lot, and I was never a very fast reader. I was going to take courses on speed reading and that, but limited time sometimes. So
Yeah.
now with all the video audios and stuff like that and podcasts, it's amazing. I just used to drive in my car, and now when I'm on the phone, on the Bluetooth, the radio cuts out, right?
Yeah.
So, but in the old cars, it would just go. So always, wherever I was going to from A to Z, I was always, always, always learning, even when you can go to bed and put stuff on them to listen to, right? And so it's the journey of growth. It's a journey of learning. It's a journey of asking questions, right? Looking out for people that are smarter than you. Oh, that's another thing, that be careful on who you listen to, because everybody is an expert
Wow.
it doesn't matter, but just real estate, in anything in life. Today, everybody knows everything. Everybody's an expert.
Yeah.
But unless you have a proven track record, I just listen from young kids, you can learn a ton of things. I got, a 1-year-old grandson and a 5-year-old granddaughter. It's amazing what I can learn from them because they're always asking questions, right? So, from questions, you learn a lot. So that's why I like to have the group because then they can ask question and everybody, they were going to ask that question. Now they can hear that answer from myself and maybe other people. So you learn that much more, right? And then they're going to hear more questions. Oh, never thought of that. So yeah. So that's why when I just came from this conference for the last 2 days, it was great because lots of different leaders from different brands and different places, and they're sharing their wisdom. So, you never,
Well,
I
yeah.
start every day at zero. Every day,
Yes. Zero.
zero. Okay, what can I learn today? What can I teach today? Right?
Yeah.
Who can I motivate today? Who can I inspire today? Who can I help out today? That's how I start my day every single day.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I'm super excited for everyone to listen to your section and learn. Thank you for giving your time because I know how busy you are. And I hope to have you back.
Great being here. We'll
Thank you.
talk again soon. All the best.
100%. Thank you.